Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. My name is Jimmy Good, and I'm your host. And joining me once again, one of my buddies, Mr. Levi Fletcher. Levi, how are you doing?
Hey, pal, how's it going?
Oh, just fine. I'm so glad to have you back on the show because we're going to be talking about something this week that I know you have been very excited about for a long time. It's probably because of the actor, which also I'm excited about because I think he's a great actor as well. But we are talking about the television show on Disney Plus, which is known as Moon Knight. Yes, it's come out. All 6 episodes are now out on Disney Plus streaming for you. And unlike some of the other reviews and kind of podcasts we've done here in the past, where we start with spoiler free and then go into spoilers, this whole show is kind of hard to talk about. And I was talking with Levi before the show about it. And I said, I don't know if we can really talk about it without spoiling something right off the bat, because there's just so many little things and we'll be bouncing around, I'm sure, all over the place. So I'm going to flip the old spoiler switch right here in the beginning, if that's okay with you, Levi.
Yeah, dude, up.
All right, here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay.
I miss having this on video so I can see the expression when you do that.
I was going to say, we decided to do just audio for this one, but trust me, I am doing it because I'm an actor. I mean, I'm not acting. There's sparks in my eyes. Anyway, the spoiler switch has been flipped. But Moon Knight. Okay, Levi, like I said, it seemed like you were excited about it. I have another friend who is really excited about it because he enjoys Moon Knight as well. I didn't know a heck of a lot about this character. I looked at one of my Marvel shirts, and weirdly enough, he's on there, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Really?
I was like, "I have a Moon Knight shirt before he was."
Is that
cool.
an older one, or is that a new?
It's an older one that actually has a bunch of different Marvel characters, a lot of kind of weird deep cuts, and for a while there, Moon Knight I think was kind of considered to be one of those characters. And he is an odd and interesting character. I think very visually striking. And I'm not going to say it was a bad choice for, one of the first kind of major, well, maybe not even first major one. Now they've done a bunch of these ones. But such an interesting choice, I think, for a full Disney Plus show. A few years ago, would you have thought Moon Knight, was going to be coming down the pipeline as his own show?
No, I had no idea, but it's really hard to tell what they're going to do here.
Yeah.
This phase, because this phase is just all over the place.
So. Oh my gosh. And look at you using the word phase without even thinking about moons, but really it's a new phase. I'm sorry, there'll be probably some moon puns in here. But anyway, so Moon Knight, for people who don't know, this is it's a character in the Marvel pantheon that has multiple personalities living inside him, and has the ability to summon a suit of power that gives him I'm only going to name a few of the powers that I saw in the show because he has got a lot more powers, I guess, in the actual comics, but he
does he?
I guess so. Super strength, flight, I believe, healing factor. He's got these various weapons that come with the suit. They seem to kind of keep regenerating, you can kind of use them again and again. And he's got a lot of endurance. And he's pretty quick as well. And that's just the base power set. So he's pretty strong, a lot more so than I had originally anticipated. I thought, oh yeah, he'll be kind of strong. But then there's a few times in the show where I was like, whoa, okay, wait. He's got a little bit more than I thought going in. But it's such an interesting show because it kind of reminds me of a few other things that I have seen or been kind of privy to in the past. So Levi, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but it gives me a little bit of the same vibes I got from Split with James McAvoy.
Yeah, remember? I could really see that.
Yeah, so kind of a really good actor, kind of trying to tackle multiple different personalities. This show is not nearly as divided, as I should say, as Split was, where Split was he had dozens of personalities. This is really down to 2 main ones for the most part, which are that of Mark Spector and Stephen Grant. Am I correct on those names?
Yeah, and I mean, we're supposed to get more because I know they debuted. Wait, we did flip the switch. So
we did flip the switch. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
I mean, we got a third, but is that it, or is there more?
At least 3, right? And one of the kind of caveats with the character in this is that Mark Spector was always, at least it seems like in this show, the main actual person, and then Stephen Grant was created when he was younger as a kind of coping mechanism to deal with his abusive mother. And Stephen Grant in the actual mythos of the Marvel world is actually the name of a fictional character who's an Indiana Jones-esque guy. So Mark Spector, American special like military force in the past turned mercenary, but then you have Stephen Grant, who is this kind of shy, meek British guy who works at a museum. And the thing I want to kind of talk about the most, Levi, and let you talk about too, and it's something that everyone's been talking about, but Oscar Isaac's performance in this, I think, besides just the striking image of Moon Knight, is the main draw of the show.
So good. Yeah, if they didn't have Oscar doing this, I don't think it would be nearly as compelling, because he just can swap between characters like no one else. It's crazy.
Yeah, and one of the things, as I've been trying to study acting more so for myself, for my own career in acting, is I look a lot more at mannerisms and like even just the small things, how he carries himself, kind of his facial expressions, the minute details that really make you believe and see the shift between when he goes from Steve to Mark or Mark to Steven. And it's so good because even when he isn't speaking, you can kind of sometimes parse out, for the most part, who he is. Like if he's Mark, if he's that kind of
Body
mercenary,
language,
yeah, exactly. If he's Mark, he's like very, he's got this kind of strong presence, upright, kind of moving forward through a thing, no problems. But then when he's Steven, he's kind of, he's kind of hunched over a little. He seems a little more neurotic. He's kind of scared because he's being put in situations that he's not used to. He's like this guy who works at a museum. He's not used to going into tombs.
He's nerdy.
Exactly. And watching him go between those. And then also there's a part because he gets his special powers from one of the pantheon of Egyptian gods, Khonshu. And he goes at one point as the avatar of Khonshu. He goes as Mark or Steven, I forget which one at this point, but he goes in to kind of talk to all the other gods who have people as their avatars, kind of the living embodiments that the gods project themselves through. But at one point, he gets taken over by Khonshu, Mark does, I think, and he starts like yelling out the words of Khonshu to the other gods. And at the same time, Oscar Isaac is like looking around all scared because he's like, I'm being possessed again, but like my mouth is moving, but I'm not controlling it. Like my eyes are the only thing I can control. It's a really excellent performance. And later on, we do get to see both Mark and Steven together at the same time. And I love the little thing that they do sometimes. Like, I've gone on record saying I'm not a huge fan of like doppelganger villains, but with this, it's not necessarily a villain. And I think it plays a little bit better. But like Mark is in a white outfit and Steven's in a black outfit. And like you can clearly tell who is who then, especially when they get to the asylum stuff. If you remember that. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, it was. I mean, if we're talking about it, it was my least favorite part.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I did not care for the asylum episode.
Okay. What was it? Was there anything specifically about that you weren't a fan of?
I just feel like that's been done so much. It being in a mental hospital and then being like, I'm trying to think of the right words, but almost like a trope, almost.
Sure. Okay. Interesting.
The personality and.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the name of the show that was on a little while ago. I remember watching the first season. I can't put my finger on it, and I meant to look it up. But it's like Charles Xavier's son. Do you remember this?
Oh, yes. What was that? Legion.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I could not think of it at all. Those episodes, or that episode specifically, and a little bit of this show reminds me of Legion. And in that show, it was like if he killed someone, he would like absorb their personality or something along those lines. So that's where it kind of gave me that feeling.
It just kind of pulls you out of the story a bit. This is just my opinion, and I know like my partner Doug, he also thought the same thing too. It kind of pulls you away from like, because then you're like, oh, is this really happening or is this not happening? Is this in his head?
Sure.
And in a mini series like this, I think that this was too much for the viewers. It was already a pretty complicated story, and then to throw this on top of it, I feel like was maybe just a little bit too far.
Sure. Well, and they also go like in and out of it a lot, where you have Mark and Steven at times who are just like in the real world, but then also in this kind of asylum, who are dealing with a therapist, a doctor, who is also the main antagonist in the real world. And that's Ethan Hawke as Arthur Harrow. And I think he does a great job in this. I think Ethan Hawke is
Yeah.
weird. Like, he's been around for so long, and he's one of those guys that this year specifically, it seems like he's had a bunch of stuff coming out where he's just popping up everywhere. But I think he does a really nice job with it. But you never really know what's like real, or they're trying to confuse you as to what's real and what's fake, right? Is that kind of the
Well,
point?
and what's funny to me is like his performance in this. I guess not funny, but it's he's just so effortless. Like he
Yeah,
plays that villain role so well. Like it doesn't even look like it's really. Sometimes you see an actor and you're like, oh, they're trying really hard to be bad,
yeah.
and here it's just no, it was just great, great job.
Yeah, totally. And like I said before, they kind of do this thing where they kind of flip back and forth between what's happening, what's not happening, and the kind of the afterlife, the Egyptian afterlife where you're being judged when Mark and Steven die, presumably. And like I said, we're gonna be bouncing around a lot. So if you're like, "What the heck?" and that's okay, because this show, you know what, they kind of bounce around. So I'm gonna say that's okay. Uh, but I thought it was pretty well done. But you start to get this sense that throughout the show, it's more of like Steven and Mark coming to terms with one another, and then also dealing
Yeah,
with Khonshu as well, who's this like really is this Egyptian god, this like tall bird monster basically, who gives them all these powers, and they don't really like Khonshu very much at the beginning, and they learn to work together. One other little thing that I liked, it's not that little, I suppose, but it's like when Mark puts on the suit versus Steven, when Mark puts it on, it's kind of the one you're seeing with the hood and the large cape. I actually just saw him in Disneyland the other day, believe it or not. But then when Steven puts it on, it's like this nice white suit, and he
yeah,
doesn't have a hood, and he's
I
kind of more
love
like
it.
a gentleman. It's like, oh, and it's like, it's a really nice little touch to think that like whatever personality is in charge at the time and puts the suit on, it's going to shift.
Definitely gives Deadpool vibes. Did you
Yeah,
get that too?
dude,
Like,
I was thinking the same thing.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Very, very much so. And I liked that even though I know they were trying to save on effects and stuff, they would kind of like kind of shoot away from him when he was in one costume, and then they would like come back to him and he'd be in a different one, just so it'd be like a cool quick change. Because I think there's one fight near the end where he does start shifting in and between them. And I'm not sure if like the suit one versus the one with the cowl and the big cape, if that one had more of like the not nunchucks, but the little like the tonfas, and that was like a specific thing. I don't know, like I don't think that suit necessarily had any type of real advantage versus the main suit, right? Uh,
it almost seemed okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost felt like Steven's punches hit harder when he was using the suit. I could be wrong,
no, you're probably right. I think
but
so.
I noticed a
Maybe.
couple of fight scenes where it was like he was hitting really hard sometimes, and then there was a lot of scenes where Mark was just getting his butt kicked. It almost seemed like Steven was the, the more the stronger one, but
Yeah, it's
they both
interesting.
have their they both have their styles. I think of fighting.
Yeah, and I wonder if they'll kind of flesh that out later on. One of the times that I kind of started to really recognize and appreciate the powers that came with it is when he's fighting all those people at that one like rich person's compound, and they have like their
Mhm.
horses, and it's like a polo area or something like that, and they like come up and stab him. Oh, it's like, no, it's like a jousting thing, and they like stab him multiple times with spears, and he just breaks them, and like he's totally fine. He's been skewered multiple times and he's okay. I was like, whoa, okay. Or when he gets resurrected from the dead and the bullets just kind of fall out of him, I was like, okay,
Yeah,
so he's pretty tough. Like he's a guy that you could like run through and he'd be like, yeah, okay, like cool. But he's not really surprised by any of that. And then later on, I think it's in the final episode, you see him flying like pretty quickly. Like I was like, whoa, like I didn't know you could do that. He just takes off and you're like, whoa,
yeah, that
wow.
was surprising too. And I don't know if that's just coming into his, if it's just Steven and Mark working together and allowing that to happen. Because at first it's like he couldn't do anything without Mark, you know, tapping in too. So it's confusing of how much is there and who needs to be in control at what time to activate which power.
Yeah, and that's kind of an issue you get with some of these characters the stronger they become, because then it becomes a challenge for writing when you're like, oh, like we really need, Mark and Steven to get over here. And at the end of the season, they can fly there, but in the beginning of the season, they could definitely not fly there.
Yeah,
So it's one of those things. And also because he does have these multiple personalities, maybe these things will conflict, and it'll be like sometimes he has this power, sometimes he doesn't. So I'm not sure, and it's very interesting. And like you said, we kind of do get introduced to a third personality there at the end, which kind of starts to put a whole new thing in there as well. Because you're like, okay, well, the first split of personality makes sense because he had it when he was like a little boy, but like now there's another person, and also we know that Arthur Harrow was once an avatar for Khonshu as well. So
well, and we don't know either if this was the dude that, because there was a moment during the final battle where there's another entity that takes over, and we're not sure who actually came to fight.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, there's like a blackout moment where neither of them remembers, and then everything is fine. I was trying to piece it together and think if that was like a larger MCU thing, like a snap situation, where I was trying to think of other things in the MCU. I'm like, is there something that happened like in Doctor Strange or something that's happened in the past where I'm like, oh, that's the moment that something happened, globally or universal, and that's the issue. I don't know, but that must be the third entity who kind of takes care of everything, and you're like, oh, okay. Which, by the way, speaking about that kind of final fight, I want to back it up just a smidge because we're going to get back to that moment, but it makes me think of one of the main antagonist, and then it makes me think of the CG of not only the main villain, but also of our hippo friend that we get in the asylum, which I thought it looked so cool, but also like so weird to see like a bipedal hippo chatting.
I was
up.
shocked that, I mean, obviously that's where a lot of the budget went, but the CGI was fantastic on the hippo.
Yeah.
What's her name? Taywin? To Girim?
I'm gonna find out. You keep talking.
Taika Waititi? No,
is it Tawaret?
Tower. Yeah, we're probably butchering it.
Yeah. Sorry.
She was great. That was fun.
Yeah, I thought it was just like, again, it was one of those things that you just never like would expect in a moment.
I thought I was gonna hate it for that 1 week. There was a cliffhanger where she's just like, "Hi," and it's like, "Oh no, what is this?"
You're sure, right?
Like, is this gonna be a Jar Jar moment? And then you're like, "Okay, good, we're safe for a bit."
Yeah, that would have been yeah, when they introduce a character that big in a moment where you're like, this is supposed to be kind of serious, like you're like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna play. Am I gonna like this character? Or am I not gonna like this character? And again, I feel like we're butchering it. Is it Tawaret? Tawaret?
Yeah, I think Tawaret.
I'm so sorry if I screwed that up.
I get flagged in the comments.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I'm just happy someone's watching. But yeah, I thought that looked really good, and then we get our massive crocodile, who is also like full, like besides Khonshu, like the only other fully CGI character, I think. So, and that's Ammit. And at first I thought it was like Sobek, but apparently I need a complete refresh on my Egyptian mythology because I apparently know next to nothing, which is fine. So that just means I need to learn more about it. But I thought she looked amazing too. I thought she looked
I thought she was. Yeah, honestly, both of their CGI was a little bit better than Khonshu.
Yeah,
there was times where Khonshu's CGI really stood out for the wrong. I mean, not terrible reasons, but sometimes you were like, "Oh, that's definitely CGI."
Well, and I wonder too if it's because Khonshu is like this kind of crow that's like just the skull of a crow and has little like tendrils going to where like the neck should be and doesn't really have a mouth that moves, and whereas those other ones you can clearly see flesh and muscles and all of that, and you can really get invested with like the eyes and everything. And maybe Khonshu will turn into that one day, like, have that fully fleshed out. But
maybe.
I don't know. Yeah. And also it's tougher too, as I like to point out, there's a video game, Lord of the Rings War in the North, where they actually have a talking eagle named Belaram, and Belaram speaks. He's got a beak, but the beak, it's more like lips. And so you start to have an issue where like you have to make the beak kind of make movements with a mouth that it doesn't have, if that makes sense.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, check out Belaram, everybody. So like that's one thing they did not put in the movies, which is probably a good thing because it's kind of hard to like. It's like a giant eagle that starts talking to you, and it's hard to deal with. But yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons, or maybe that's canonically or in the comics he never looks like a full crow or whatever he should be. I don't know what he's completely based off of there, but Yeah, I think he's cool. It's interesting that his whole thing is that he picks people to kind of enact vengeance, kind of Ghost Rider-esque, and he's like trying to have them protect the travelers of the night. He's kind of like the patron saint of night travelers, and that's why he wants to turn people into the Moon Knight, like a knight for the moon, as it were. And I never really understood this. I don't know if you picked up on it at all, Levi, but like if Mark and Steven get way stronger when there's like a full moon or something. I don't know.
I don't know anything. Is that in the comics?
No, I don't know. I just kind of seemed like one of those things.
Oh,
And then there's also
that would make sense,
right?
That's like their night to kick ass, you know?
Yeah. I was also thinking too, there's a moment later on where Steven and Khonshu together, and this ends up getting Khonshu imprisoned, but they like turn the night sky back to a certain
cool scene.
Yeah, it's a beautiful scene.
Yes.
Where it's like they have to move it so the constellation's just perfect so they can use this map to go find the small statue that Ammit is trapped in. I forget the name of it, but it's like a special Egyptian statue that if you are trapped in one of these things as a god, it's basically like you're dead. Like you can't interact or do anything.
I was annoyed by that. He got punished for that, and then there was never like an "I told you so" moment. He warned
Yeah,
them,
I wonder if
know,
it'll come back in the next season if they do a second, right?
Oh.
But yeah, you're totally right. Because basically, earlier on, Arthur Harrow basically convinces all the avatars of the gods that he's like, yeah, I'm not here to do anything bad. Like, Khonshu's the one who's causing problems. And Khonshu's like, no, you gotta trust me. He's trying to unleash Ammit, the person we all decided that should stay, tucked away. And Ammit's whole thing is basically to go around and judge people who haven't done anything yet. This is very like Minority Report, but to judge people before they do a bad thing and kill them before they do something wrong. They basically get judged immediately. Whereas Khonshu wants to give people the choice. He's like, we'll punish people if they do a bad thing, but not before, which, I get, so. Yeah, what do you think about all that?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, there's like the scales and everything.
It's there's a lot. There's really a lot to this. It's kind of a bummer that they really forced it to be 6 episodes because I fell in love with this character, this set, the super. Words are failing me right now.
That's okay.
But I love these standout characters that just really break off. Like that's why Doctor Strange is one of my favorite characters because he's just so different than your standard Marvel setup.
Yeah.
And it just to really push every single thing into 6 episodes was just so much. I mean, I don't understand. There's no reason why you couldn't have just pushed it out to 8, 9, 10 episodes.
Well, and I wonder too if it seems like it's changing a little bit. Like Hawkeye was 6, where I think some of these ideas, I don't know if they've started and were always television shows, or if some of them were movies that they're like, well, we could break this up and make it into multiple episodes.
Oh, do you think some of them were filmed that way?
Or at least
it's a movie?
At first, maybe. I think some of the idea could have been. I'm trying to think of what's the best example. Because like Hawkeye to me, I don't know if maybe it was always a television show, but like part of me thinks that like at one time or another, way back in the beginning, they were like, oh, we're doing a Black Widow movie. Hawkeye should get a movie too. And then we'll get, his Kate Bishop in there. But they're like, actually, let's do a television show for the streaming service, which makes sense too. And I think there was so much emphasis and money put into some of the effects and the characters, like we said, that maybe that's one of the reasons why you don't see episode 7 and 8 right now, because they spent so much money on trying to make each of these episodes feel like mini movies and the look and the style of them like mini movies, because like they want to leave you wanting more, right? And we want more, and it's just well done. And it's also interesting too that we talk about Oscar Isaac so much. There's like one episode, I think it's the second from the last one or something like that, where he's gone. There's like a good portion of it where he's not in it. And when he came back, I was like, oh yeah, this is like his story. And then there's like a full episode where it's like basically just him talking to himself, which is incredible. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they do it almost so flawlessly where you really believe that he is working with himself, and it's because he is. And it's just, man, I look at it, and I looked it up. he went to Juilliard, because I was like, as an actor, I'm like, man, he's so good. And I'm like, oh, of course he went to Juilliard. Like, like of course he's that freaking good. And you just buy everything he's doing. And when he like transforms not only into the suit or whatever, but like when he transforms into another person, he kind of has this like wave that comes over him, and then he's just that character. And you're like, oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, we're doing this now. Not to say that the rest of his cast is slouching in any regards either, though, because we talked about Ethan Hawke, who was great, but then we also have Layla, his wife, played by May Calamo. Is it Calamoy? Maui? Calamoy? I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this. Who I thought was great also. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I lied. No, I'm right. No, that's good. Okay, yeah, that's right, because I saw his mom up here, too, who's also interesting. But what did you think of Layla?
Yeah, I really liked her. She really... I hate to compare them, but she reminded me of Evie from Mummy. Just that actress and everything.
Okay.
Rachel Weisz, is that right?
Yeah, that's the name.
Yeah. So she reminded me a lot of, like... this kind of reminded me of Mark being Brendan Fraser and Mummy, and her being, his girlfriend in it. So I just got those vibes. It's funny. She did a great job, though. I like Scarlet Scarab. She held her own. She didn't get a lot of time to shine, but I'm sure she will if there's a season 2.
Yeah, so that's her name, is Scarlet Scarab. Is that like her superhero name?
Yeah.
Because the first thing I thought when I saw her and her movements and everything, I was like, oh, so she's like Falcon, but she doesn't need like a jetpack, like,
Yeah. Yep. She does have like, I suppose you're right.
The wings, but she also has swords and stuff too. There's like a little girl's like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" And she kind of like looks at her and she's like, "Yes." Like she's just like, "Yes." If that makes you run away from this battle, don't get hurt. But yeah, it was nice. She gets a little time to play, and she also gets a little bit of fun where she gets to be taken over by our hippo friend once again.
Yeah.
For just a moment, and that's kind of fun. Where you're like, okay. I was hoping, like, and that's probably very a canonical or comic book accurate outfit, but I was really hoping she'd get like a full hood and everything too. I basically wanted her and Harrow to all get like full Moon Knight style looking clothes, where you'd be like, oh wow, that's like they're fully represented, like, but like a full mask and everything too, just because I love how striking it is. Not that we need to cover up those beautiful faces, but it was just something that I was like, oh, every time that when like the Moon Knight with the hood came on, I was like, okay, he means business. And it was like twice in the show where his Moon Knight cape looked just like the moon. Like obviously that's very, purposeful, but I love that because I'm like, oh, that looks so nice. I'm sure there's many comic fans who are like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. Like, thank you.
Yeah, the only real like CGI comment I saw was there's a scene in the first episode with the truck. The very first like truck chase or accident, there was a lot of chatter about the CGI not looking great about that accident.
Oh, really? Okay.
Other than that, I didn't really.
That's one of the
anything. So.
That's the first episode. I remember that I enjoyed that scene because that was like Steven, because you start with Steven, who has no idea what's going on. He's just this British guy who works at a museum, and he would just black out, and then he'd come back, and like everyone around him would be dead. And it was such a fun little kind of joke to have early on, as it were, or just kind of like a fun way to advance the plot, where he would just come and he would like look in his hand, there'd be a gun, and he'd be like, "Oh my gosh, what just happened?" And before he started working with Mark. And then another thing later on is when there's like a bunch of dead guards later on because of what Harrow does. And then I'm just keep calling her the hippo, like starts talking through them to Layla. And so there's like these dead people on the ground who kind of rise up for a second. And they like say like, "Hey, Layla, like, watch out. Mark needs your help," or whatever. And like would fall back down. And she's like, "What?" Like, I thought that was really interesting. I was like, oh man, these are fun, like little things. Like the show is pretty serious and pretty dark sometimes, but also it knows how to be playful. And I think that kind of shows off the dynamic nature of the show, and maybe is kind of a representative in a way. Maybe I'm looking way too far into this, but like of the multiple personalities that Mark has, is that like it can be serious and like a representation of mental health and these issues that Mark is facing, but then also it can be like, we're having some fun, like we where there's some funny moments and some interesting things going on here. But Yeah, I'm not saying this like I don't know where this lands for you, Levi. Is this like your top favorite Marvel show right now, or is it top 2, top 3?
Oh, it's WandaVision's still the top.
Okay.
I would say right now. Okay, so what do we got to work with right now? We've got WandaVision,
Yep.
Captain America.
Well, you mean Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Well, Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
So Wanda, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Loki.
Yep.
And then
those are the main ones on Disney Plus that aren't Agents of Shield.
Yeah.
Or Peggy Carter. But yeah, I'm kind of counting just like the Disney Plus streaming shows like as their own thing to go off of if you want to rank stuff.
Yeah, I would say it's up there though. I really enjoyed this character. I really like Oscar Isaac's performance. And he's not even really, to me, he's not really that powerful. Like Moon Knight gets his butt kicked quite a bit. And I don't know if that's just from lack of like them working together, but he gets put out quite a few times and even shot at one point. So
sure,
and it's not like so he's not an overpowered superhero. That's kind of nice to see.
Sure, yeah. He would slot in pretty nicely, though. I think he's kind of like in between a lot of the Avengers as far as the power levels go. Like if you were to join up with the team, but I also think you do have a powerhouse actor in Oscar where you start thinking like, oh, it'd be really cool to see him in bigger MCU things because
I bet he would just rip when he gets into his element.
Oh my gosh, and to think of him playing off multiple people and also with multiple personalities and an ensemble cast, that would be so much fun where they have these jokes about being like, I like Mark, be like, I like Steven, and then he's like, we both can hear you, like stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of opportunities there. But, and clearly for people who don't remember him, but I think most people do, there's two major things that I know him from. That's obviously as Poe Dameron in the sequel trilogies of 7, 8, and 9 for Star Wars. But then also, it's not his first time in Egypt because he did play Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse.
Right.
Which is kind of nuts to think about. He just keeps going back to Egypt. It's like, it's pretty good.
Forgot that for some reason.
Which that will definitely... I think is definitely a potential joke along with the Chris Evans Human Torch and Captain America for Deadpool 3. I could see him making a big joke about that. But, I was like, oh man, this is his shot to come back. And you know what? Like, kudos to him. Not that Apocalypse was like the worst movie ever. Like, it didn't have a lot of love, and the X-Men movies kind of, they're so different every time. But I like Oscar Isaac. I like the character of Apocalypse, but I'm glad that he was still open to doing a superhero thing based in Egypt after that. Like, he wasn't like, yeah, I already did something like that. I don't want to do it again. It's like, they're like, yeah.
What's funny is no, sorry, not to cut you off.
Oh, no, it's fine.
This just came into my brain, but have you seen this, that interview he did where they're like, hey, would you ever play Poe again? And he was like, absolutely not. Like, just right away.
Oh, really?
I've always laughed at that. Yeah, I know he's worked with Disney so much, but he was really salty about that role.
Well, I remember I saw an episode or an interview too a while ago with John Boyega where he had said like he wouldn't want a Finn Disney Plus show, and he's like, you're not going to Disney Plusify me or something like that. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But like at the same time, I don't know. I guess I'm just too close to it because if they offered me any shit, I'd be like, yeah. And clearly, instead of doing, Poe, if he said like, I don't want to do Poe Dameron, I would rather do something completely different. And they're like, well, what about Marvel stuff? And clearly he's interested in it. And I'm just glad it worked out because it's just a weird, interesting show that like you just, like I said, we've had a few comparisons, like I said, to Legion or Split as far as movies and television, but this feels like its own thing. Very striking visuals, too. And there is a call out at one moment from our hippo, I keep Terawet, I think. But she talks about the ancestral plane for a second. And some of the visuals occasionally kind of remind me a smidge of Black Panther. Just for a moment. Where you're like, oh, okay. Like, I could see where all this stuff could tie together. And how all the gods know each other. And that there's kind of bigger things at play.
I suppose.
Yeah. Which, by the way, the Egyptian afterlife was interesting too. Obviously, lots of sand or whatever, but then like the field of reeds and how that was portrayed, I was like, oh, this is interesting. But again, you're coming right out of the asylum, so it's very different. my question to you, Levi, is they I don't know why he did this, and I forget if they explain it, but like in the very first episode, they show Harrow putting glass in his slippers
Oh,
and walking around.
it's funny. I was just talking to Doug about this because it's the very last thing you see. Because he's walking through the asylum and he's got blood in his shoes,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Why am I bleeding?" And it's like, I don't know. I think you kind of touched on it. I don't know if how do I explain this. Trying to gather my thoughts. So, is Mark and Steven the only character that Khonshu has gone after with a split personality? And that's what I'm wondering if, just kind of like in the way that Mark or Steven chains himself to the bed to know when he goes off. I wonder if that's kind of the same thing for Harrow. Hey, am I putting glass in my shoes
Oh,
almost to know when I'm becoming this other person? I don't know. That could be a stretch. That was a thought of mine.
sure. That's
I wonder if
interesting.
maybe that was like a way to indicate, like, hey, I've been somewhere else.
Yeah, and maybe that Arthur Harrow is also like one part of him is a psychologist, and the other part is like this crazy person trying to get Ahmet free.
I mean, am I reaching here? Like,
I
is
don't
that
know. No, I like that idea, man. That's a great one. I also just immediately thought of the end of Joker, where
Oh,
he's
okay.
in like an asylum with like red, like bloody
Yeah.
footprints and stuff. I just thought of that, right? I'm like, oh yeah, Joker.
Can't think
But
of why
yeah.
else he would do that. What
Yeah.
else the glass would be for?
Yeah, I didn't know if at first it was like some sort of like you have to be in pain to be an acolyte of this person, or it was just some sort of like ritualistic thing, or he was just like a kind of a weird dude. But I remember thinking like, oh, okay, that's an odd choice. And the fight scene, like I said, I wanted to get back to where he's got his staff, he's got a few various powers. It mostly seems like he seemed a little like if you didn't know and out of context, he would kind of remind me a little bit of Gambit because he's got like these kind of purple projection things when he like hits the staff on the ground and stuff. I was
Yes.
like, oh, it's like
Yeah.
if you didn't tell anyone, you'd be like, is Ethan Hawke playing Gambit? But in the background, having like a massive Ahmet, and then like Khonshu just shows up and is also massive, and they start fighting. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But there's one shot I absolutely love where it shows Khonshu falling and Ahmet kind of attacking with Khonshu's like moon spear, and it's kind of tilted or off kind of balance a little bit, the shot is, and you see Harrow walking up to Mark who's on the ground, and that's kind of going on in the background of the big moon in the background.
That's
I was like,
such a cool
oh.
scene. Yeah,
I was like, that's
they're
a great
fighting in the
shot.
background.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, like sometimes I was like, I don't know, it looked really nice.
Some of the cinematography is very well done.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I also like the music too. Like it's got this very
Yes.
interesting kind of beat,
Yes.
or a little bit reminiscent of Black Panther again, but it definitely, and by that I mean it was different than a typical kind of orchestral thing. It had this kind of like, it felt, I don't know if the authenticity of it, and if it's actual Egyptian music that they kind of changed, or it had lyrics like that. But there's something about it that really hit, and they show all these cool images at the end, and you're like it's like the moon but shown from the bottom of a well, and like in the desert presumably, and you're like, oh wow, like there's some really cool stuff where I'm like, wow, this is really nice. And also the set design. I don't know how many of those things were actual sets, but I think a few of them were. Especially in like the Egyptian tombs, I was like, man, these look really nice. It reminded me, again, those were like the Mummy moments for me, Levi. Like, speaking about the Mummy, which, side note, I miss the old Mummy group. Oh man, that first Mummy movie and the sequel, and the third one's okay, but like, man, they're so good. But I love seeing like the practical effects and sets and like the creepy zombie mummy people. I was like, is this Disney being like, well, if no one's gonna make another Mummy movie after the Tom Cruise one, then we'll do it. Right?
Yeah, it's. I think every single series so far has had some kind of fun, either like really compelling soundtrack, or like with WandaVision, you get the super catchy songs, right?
Oh yeah.
But not really anything for Captain America. I didn't, because the TVA I think had their own like catchy theme song. Loki, if I remember right, and the soundtrack for here was just great. But yeah, Captain America didn't have a lot going on in the sound department.
Not that I recall, at least something that sticks out. Yeah, if we mean the Falcon, the Winter Soldier is what you're saying, right?
And this is a key thing for Marvel. Like, when certain characters walk on the stage or certain cameos happen in movies, you get a little snippet of their song
Yeah.
or their theme, and that's huge for Marvel fans. And just it's important to start coining those to get that character to really get fleshed out and become a fan favorite.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And if this were like the Netflix thing before, where we're seeing these guys pop up only on television, I would be thinking, well, there's probably not a great chance necessarily that they're going to show up in the movies. However, we've had that, change up a little bit with Daredevil recently. But with Disney Plus stuff like this, where you're taking characters like Wanda and Vision and Loki and Hawkeye and Falcon and Winter Soldier and giving them a television show now, that does not mean they're out of the game for movies. So that just means to me that characters like Moon Knight have a great chance at least popping up in something
Mhm.
else, if only briefly. But I think if you do something where it's like, all right, Moon Knight's going to keep having his own show, but also when we do these big Avengers level threats, we're going to find ways to bring them in. And I don't know how Doctor Strange ended, but this seems like a thing Strange would be aware of. He'd be like, "Oh, the Egyptian gods, I know all about them," and he'd be like, "What?" Like, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now that you bring that up, like I don't know if that's just a TikTok I just saw. Or were we talking about that where there's like a scene somebody put something together where like they each oh no, I think it was
Talking about
oh yeah, I'm
WandaVision.
sorry. Yeah, no, it was a TikTok I saw recently where they were doing a showcase of old X-Men um the old X-Men show. And when the Dark Phoenix blossomed and she like became her full Dark Phoenix, then all the big characters from around the universe could feel it. Doctor Strange could feel it, the Watcher could feel it, Charles X could feel it. So it was just interesting to see. So yeah, kind of like what you're saying. Like this is something you think he would be able to feel and know that's going on in the world.
Yeah,
Um,
because otherwise, for some of these characters, and he's like I said, he's kind of in between being like um, Hawkeye or Black Widow versus like a Thor or Hulk as far as power
mhm.
goes. But if you have someone who's too clandestine and not like a huge player, you have to start thinking, all right, how do we get to fold them in? Whereas like
Yeah,
with this, he could be like, yeah, I noticed one night when all of the moon and the stars and everything was moving like crazy, like it seemed very strange to me, like or whatever it might be, or be like, yeah, there were reports that there was a giant crocodile fighting a giant dead bird in Egypt, and I decided to look into it and you popped up. So I just feel like Moon Knight, I'm sure he's been an Avenger. I feel like most of the characters in Marvel, like at one time or another, become an Avenger for a little bit. And even if he hasn't been, you can just make him one. Like,
yeah.
why not? And he's like, his whole thing is vengeance. Like, so I feel like him and Ghost Rider would be just best buddies, hanging out with the Avengers. Like, I think that would be so cool because, like, I wonder if they're trying to build up to doing kind of like the edgy Avengers stuff, which we've talked about in the past with like the group of like it's like Daredevil, Punisher, Ghost Rider, like I forget if they're called like the like not the Midnight Sun, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know if this is really are you saying like are these movies and shows building up to something bigger, like an Infinity War or
Potentially,
something?
or just like even like a smaller kind of scale thing, but
Yeah,
maybe.
I won't spoil anything from Multiverse of Madness. I mean, anybody listening to the show, I'm sure, has seen a trailer or two,
Yeah.
so you know that like, hey, they're dealing with multiverse stuff. And I think maybe this phase could be doing something like that because you have WandaVision dealing with multiple realities. Then you have this, then you have this movie, Multiverse of Madness, coming out, and then you have Quantum Mania coming out. So I don't know if there's going to be like a big blowout, and then maybe all the Avengers have to come together to deal with that. I don't know, and I don't know where Moon Knight would fit in that, but definitely possible.
Sure. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's one of those things where I think they do need to have another Thanos, right? Like at some point they need to have someone that they all need to kind of go up against again.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like that is going to show up soon. If it's not Kang, it might be Galactus. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
I-
it's hard to say because there's not a I mean, they're really definitely taking a break. It seems after the whole Infinity War to really let these characters have their own stories now again, and um, create a new path for the next villain. But yeah, I mean, we've got Thor coming up here with just Gore the God Butcher, just not multiversal,
Yeah.
at least that we know of. So
Yeah.
I don't
Also,
know.
huh? Continue, please.
Well, no, just I'm just thinking because Spider-Man also dealt with multiverse stuff, so maybe that's what we're looking at is maybe there's going to be a big multiversal blowout here at the end of this phase, but I guess we'll see.
Well, apparently, in a recent interview, Oscar Isaac says, and this is coming from Screen Rant, mentioned that if he would love Moon Knight to team up with Daredevil, Punisher, and Ghost Rider. And he also
Yeah.
enjoys seeing his character involved with the Midnight Suns. Okay, so I'm not crazy, but yeah, I think any of those would be.
Isn't that a game coming out
That
this
is
year?
yeah. So that is like from the XCOM people for Axis.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and they deal with more of like magical stuff typically, and that's why I love that Wolverine's in the team because it's like we have to deal with magic, and they're like, oh, we'll throw Wolverine.
Yeah, because
in.
Doctor Strange is in it, and isn't it supposed to be Blade and Moon Knight too? And
I
like
think
you were saying,
Blade. I don't know if Moon Knight is in there, but maybe.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know if he popped up in the beginning of that trailer. There's a lot of different people. Again, these teams over time have like everybody.
Yeah.
You know, at some point or another, but I think like the Midnight Suns were typically more of like an edgier group. But yeah, I could totally see Moon Knight teaming up. Like I said before, Ghost Rider, but Punisher would be really good. Daredevil would be kind of fun. And also I just think Charlie Cox is like such a great.
You just want to see your boy on the screen again.
Who's my boy? Oh, Kingpin?
Oh, no,
Willem Dafoe.
Dude, the motorcycle guy. God damn it.
Ghost Rider.
Thank you. Yes, Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider? Okay, Levi, he's going to happen, all right? And I understand that maybe I'm not a perfect match for Johnny Blaze.
Michael Cera, he's got this.
I've said this multiple times, though. If they would consider me to be Johnny Blaze, we'll do a 90-10 split. 90% Fire Skeleton. Only 10% needs to be my face. I think that would be... people come to see the Fire Skeleton. You know, they want to see the Flaming Skeleton. Like, I could just walk around and just say guilty a bunch. I want
I
so
wonder
badly.
who would be good in that role. We're kind of drifting off topic here.
No, it's fine. No, I've talked about it before, though. Okay, because they had Robbie Reyes who was like a secondary Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he got his powers from Johnny Blaze, and they show that version of Ghost Rider, I believe, in the show briefly. So that means that they would probably need an older Ghost Rider, maybe, sort of, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is like canon, but like no one ever acknowledges that, like in the movies. Like Phil Coulson never came back. Like I thought Phil Coulson for sure was going to show up in Endgame. Complete side note.
I'm sure he'll be in Secret Wars, Secret Invasion.
Or like
guaranteed.
I feel like they should just give him some love at this point because like just
I guarantee he'll be back with Nick.
Yeah. Anyway, but Moon Knight. It sounds like we both recommend it, right? Well, actually, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I would recommend it. Levi, would you recommend it?
I don't know if I would recommend it to super casual Marvel fans. It is a little bit. Well, I don't mean to sound like a hipster, but it's definitely don't go into it thinking that it's like a Captain America or Iron Man or Thor. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a complicated story. There's a lot going on. So is it for everybody? I don't know. I would, if you're into great performances, it's worth checking out just for that alone for Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
But I know for like my partner Doug example, like it was confusing for him. You know, there's a lot going on there, and
yeah, I see what you mean. I think maybe a different way to put exactly what you're saying, or hopefully, is that a lot of the Marvel stuff up until this point has been very, very straightforward as far as the movies are concerned, because they have 2.5 hours, and it has to kind of be like a typical, like an origin story or a sequel story or what have you. But this one, because it's a television show and it's a more complex character, there's going to be some weird stuff, kind of like Loki or WandaVision, where you can kind of go in a lot of different directions, and it really does behoove you to pay close attention to it. Whereas in a lot of those other things, you maybe don't need to pay attention to like every little thing. This one it does help you a lot, because there will be moments where you're like, wait a second, wasn't he that guy? Weren't they here? What just happened?
Yeah.
Whereas like you say, Captain America or Iron Man or something, it's not like Iron Man blacks out and wakes up and he's in a different, well, maybe he does when he drinks too much, but that's Iron Man 2. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's usually pretty straightforward as to what's happening in the story. There's clearly a villain, and they're like, here's how we defeat the villain. And there's stuff in here that is that way too. But in the middle, that's where you get to see a lot of that kind of the afterlife and the personality split and the personality playing off each other, and how all the gods are kind of intertwined in this. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot. And I could see, Levi, where you're talking about where you wish this might be 8 episodes, 10 episodes, or something a little bit bigger than that. And maybe in the future they will.
Yeah, this show needed to breathe just a little bit more. Just a tiny bit.
Sure.
I could understand why Hawkeye was 6,
Yeah.
You got a criminal gang, and, that's pretty much it. There's not too much to it. But for this, well, in WandaVision, was that 7, 8, 9?
Oh, I thought Wanda was 8.
9.
But I might be wrong.
Yeah,
that one was... What a trip. That one... Man, like, I think you have to know going into that kind of that one especially, that like each episode is going to be drastically different, at least in tone or style, than the last one. Because like the first 2 episodes are like, I think some people were like, I don't know about this, and then it becomes more Marvel like towards the end. Because the beginning, it's like, why am I watching like a black and white sitcom? Like,
yeah.
But I loved it. I thought that was great. But yeah, this one, the production value seems to be very high. And I don't know, I would recommend at least checking out an episode or 2 if you're interested. And if you like Oscar, if you like Oscar Isaac, like Levi was saying, at all as an actor or just as a performance study, like I said, for me, that's kind of what I was watching it for. One of the main things, because I was like, man, he's just, and it's not just like, I'm just trying to, build him up because he's a fellow actor, as it were. He's just really, really good. Like, he's really good. Exceptionally good. And I really hope that he gets recognition for this, because it's hard enough to be emotionally vulnerable like that with just a regular character, but now he's doing it with 2 characters, sometimes kind of like a third or a fourth, and he's interacting with everybody, and he's just always on, like, and it's really impressive. And I just kept thinking about those scenes where he's like walking down a hallway with himself and interacting with himself, and I was like, man, the timing and stuff on this is so darn good. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it's just so it's so impressive. I was like, he's reacting to himself, talking to himself as they're kind of sneaking down a hallway. I'm like, that must have been kind of difficult, but clearly he was up for it. So bravo to him and everybody else in the cast. I thought everyone was really good. Great jobs all around. There wasn't like any thing really that seemed like a deficit, besides the fact that maybe they could have done more, like there wasn't anything like I was like, there wasn't as much of this, or this could have been better. Like, it seemed all really
I think
solid.
it had the perfect amount of action and different sets and different, I mean, it had a lot going.
Yeah, and it does touch a little bit on some scary stuff sometimes, like horror elements, where there's one scene where there's like a mummy who brings a guy in to like start mummifying him or start taking out organs. Right. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is pretty messed up. I was like, that was the most mummy-esque feeling moment, making me think of those original or those older mummy movies, not the original, but I was like, man, okay, they're going there, and it's kind of spooky. Or where she gets pulled back at one moment, like Layla gets pulled back into the darkness multiple times, and she's like screaming and like getting clawed back there. I was like, oh my gosh, like this, it's like this feels a little Sam Raimi-esque, but yeah, I thought it was really good. Levi, do you have anything else you would like to say about Moon Knight?
I mean, it was fantastic. I'm sure it'll, if you're a fan of Marvel, it'll be one of your new favorite characters.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm really excited to hopefully see more of this character and Oscar Isaac and more things Marvel related, because I think there's a lot to play with here. And as time goes on, I know right now at the time of this recording, Norse mythology is pretty hot right now. Like, it still seems to be, maybe not as hot. It was kind of white hot there for a minute, because it was like, we got the Thor stuff and the God of War stuff, and there's a lot going on. I feel like Egyptian mythology...
I'm a little burnt out on Norse, I'll be honest. After Skyrim for 10 years, and then just you got your Assassin's Creed, and I'm a little burnt out on Norse. So I do like this change, and Egyptian is it's always been really fun. It's always been really cool and
Yeah. We don't know enough about
interesting.
it yet. Like, we're not at that point where like everybody kind of knows like Odin, Thor, and Loki. Like, I know I'm not that way with the Egyptian mythology. Like, I don't know like the 4 or 5 or 9, the Ennead or whatever. But I always felt like it was going to be Egypt next or like Aztec next. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the
Yeah.
Mayan Aztec mythology is coming soon, right? And then eventually it'll go maybe even further east with some of the other types of pantheons, because there's always so much fun to be had with these various gods that you, especially in the comics where there's such a rich history that we don't know a lot about yet. And I'm hopeful that we're gonna get more of that, and again, we're gonna be educated, maybe not in the like the straight proper way,
Yeah.
but like through the Marvel way, like, and hopefully that'll lead people to seek out and learn more about these
Well, and
pantheons.
it's always funny too to see them announce these new characters coming up, and you're always like, well, how the hell are they going to make She-Hulk work? How the hell are they
Yeah,
going to make Moon Knight work or
yeah,
Doctor Strange? And then they just do it
yeah.
every time.
Yeah, yeah, they do a really good job with that, and I also wonder too, like, if this group like She-Hulk and Moon Knight are on the board as a batch together, as being like a thought for Kevin and the team going forward, saying like, yeah, we need to introduce these guys to introduce this next thing, or if it's just like, let's do this group and see which ones really, really resonate with people. And then, go to the next batch and kind of keep going and seeing what really strikes true. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to know these things. I want to talk to Kevin Feige. I want to see that whiteboard, Levi, the one that's like,
Well,
this is what we're
and
building up to.
kind of touched on it before too with the Disney Plusify. It's kind of funny that ScarJo threw such a big fit about it, and then now you've got like, hey, this is really successful. You've got all these actors being really recognized for their performances now. You've got Elizabeth Olsen who's winning Emmys and WandaVision winning Emmys and all these things. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to be on Disney Plus. It's
Yeah.
it's a popular service. So,
Yeah, I wonder if for Scarlett Johansson, because you're talking about like the $80 million that she was trying to get back, that she felt she was owed. I think that's what it was, but I think it must be a deal where it's different, on Disney Plus, obviously, than it is for film. And I wonder if they're trying to figure out how to compensate their actors and make it appealing to them, because they can't necessarily say, all right, you're going to get this much percent off the back end after this thing comes out, because you're like, are you giving them, like a percentage of a 1% for every person who watches it, So I know what you're saying as far as like the acclaim, but I could see where she was like, yeah, I'm kind of winding down my career with the MCU stuff, and I want like this big kind of final
payday.
paycheck
Yeah.
that I was told I was getting, and then the pandemic kind of threw everything off. But I think they're still working together in some capacity. I don't know if she'll be coming back as Black Widow anytime soon, because it seems like she's not been replaced, but kind of handed the torch off to like her sister after what we saw like in Hawkeye, who I really like, by the way. I think she's really
Yeah.
funny and very.
Oh, Yelena, love.
Every scene she's in, like she's got this humorous
I hope
sense
she's
about
an
her.
Echo. Seriously, I really hope that she's got a part in Echo. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah, okay. So explain to me again, Echo. I heard about this coming. Tell me more about this.
Oh, Echo is she was the villain from Hawkeye.
Oh yes. That's
And
what it is.
yeah, so she's getting her own show, and yeah, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's the show that will start with her not killing Kingpin. It's going to be great.
Yeah,
Because they're not going to kill Kingpin because he's
yeah, they
too
can't kill
darn good. You know who I'd love to see? I'd love to see Oscar Isaac fight. Well, I should say Oscar Isaac. I should say Moon Knight fight the Kingpin.
Yeah.
But side note, I also think if they're going to recast Apocalypse one day, it's too bad that like Vincent D'Onofrio is so good. He would be a
Yeah.
great Apocalypse. Like
maybe
would
down the
be-
road when they
Ugh.
reintroduce the X-Men.
Yeah, I just don't know if they would double down. That's okay. Give it to somebody else. I want Vincent D'Onofrio to be Kingpin forever. He's just so good. I love him so much. There wasn't enough of him in Hawkeye. Spoiler for Hawkeye. But yeah, so check out Moon Knight if you have the Disney Plus on your streaming. If you're allowed to do so, if you have a subscription, and if you don't, use the offer. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have any offer. We don't. We're not affiliated with them, not yet. But Disney, if you're listening, I'd love to be. And by affiliated, I mean I would like to be Ghost Rider. Please allow me to be Ghost Rider. I also want to take a moment to read off some of the reviews and thoughts that you guys had about Moon Knight. This one comes in from @RyanLayman3 over on Twitter. Thanks, Ryan. It says, I really enjoyed the story, though they left so much open at the end that I just want to know more. I really like the setting of Egypt and the history of Egyptian gods. Ooh, that makes two of us, my friend. This one came over from our Discord. This one comes in from Mecha. Mecha, love you, buddy. He says, although I haven't caught the final episode yet, I've really enjoyed Moon Knight so far. Watching Oscar Isaac bounce back and forth between personalities and subsequently verbally jab at each other has been delightful. Also, not knowing much about the character of Moon Knight himself, it was cool to learn more about the lore behind the character and his backstory. I don't know how closely it sticks to the canon of the comic books, but I really liked where it was going. And I really enjoyed Ethan Hawke as the antagonist as well. I don't know whether to love him or hate him, but his performance definitely gets me engaged whenever he was on screen. Overall, it's been a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Anyway, to wrap up the show today, Levi, I wanted to know, what you've been playing, what you've been killing time with, man. What's been going on with you?
I'm winding down on Elden Ring. I haven't touched it in maybe a couple weeks now, so I think I've finally got that itch scratched.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been playing a lot of other things. I mean, I still pop on Pokemon Go on my phone sometimes. Now that it's getting nicer out, I'll kind of play that a little bit when I'm bored in the car or something. Not while I'm driving.
Yes.
It's just like, how did you get in that accident? just trying to catch a Krabby. Yeah, and then I've been playing World of Warcraft, and there's a couple of games coming out. I know that there's a remake of Advanced War coming to Switch that I really wanted to play. I think that got delayed because of the war with Ukraine right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still like to check that out when they finally find a suitable time to release that.
Yeah.
There's a couple others coming out this year too. What else is coming?
You didn't get Kirby, did you?
Did not get Kirby. I got the demo. Thought it was cute. I just didn't really want to spend the $70 on it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I understand that.
I don't think that game looks long enough to me.
Sure.
To warrant. Maybe if it goes on sale someday, but that'll be a while. Nintendo takes their time.
Yeah, is Breath of the Wild still at $60? It probably should be, but
it gets a lot of discounts here and there.
Okay. Okay, so I just figured it was one of those the first party Nintendo stuff just never goes on sale. It's like you either buy it at full price or you don't buy it. But yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I was wondering about WoW because I know you've been playing that a little bit too, and I was like, I just wondering if you're playing or watching anything else that you wanted to talk about. I was like, just give him a moment there. There's nothing else TV or movie related that you want to speak about besides Doctor Strange.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about Doctor Strange. But yeah, it was a trip.
I can't wait. I can't wait. This Saturday, baby. Next podcast will be Doctor Strange.
I will say this: do not take young children. Definitely should have maybe been rated R.
That's okay. What movie did we see, Levi? Was it okay? Amazing Spider-Man 2 we saw early on a Saturday, and there were a bunch of kids there, and it had a pretty brutal ending. And I was like, I was like, oh great. But I thought there was another one we saw a while ago, a superhero film that we're watching it, and we're just like, man, there's a lot of kids here, and I was like, I don't think there should be kids here.
What did we go see? Was it maybe it was The Hobbit? I don't know.
No,
I remember that. But yeah, it
wasn't Winter Soldier. Even though that one's pretty serious. But that one's still, I don't know. There was one where I was like, wow, this is pretty violent. We're just getting older, where we're just starting to recognize this stuff. Because in the past, I'd be like, I don't care, bring kids, whatever. I don't care if they freak out. But now I'm like, oh, that poor kid. I don't want them to be traumatized by Multiverse of Madness. But that's a good PSA. If you have children, usually with these movies now, you can't just speculate that they're going to be completely family friendly. So I've heard of parents doing this thing where they go and they'll either look up online first or they'll go see the movie first just to make sure it's okay for kids, and then they'll take their kids to it.
Yeah, this one's definitely on the darker side.
Cool.
So.
Yep. It's like that family-friendly film, Revenge of the Sith. Family friendly.
Oh, the younglings.
All the younglings. He should have had a red lightsaber there. How amazing would it have been, Levi? Brings out a red lightsaber. All those kids would have been running for the windows. Man, so good. Love that movie. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us here today as we talk about Moon Knight. It was a pleasure, Levi, having you on.
Another fun episode.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being on. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for taking the time. And like I said before, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I know that there's been a rebranding of the channel, but everything's pretty much the same as it's always been. So thank you for everybody for understanding that. If you have any questions or comments or any ideas for the future for podcasts or whatnot, please let me know. I keep asking people, Levi, if they want a weekly show or if they want it bi-weekly, which I mean not twice a week, but once every other week. I don't know. I don't know what to do. So I want people's input. So Levi, you're gonna have to tell me maybe after, be like, do it every week, or be like, do it once a month. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't. I mean, bi-weekly maybe might give you more time to, I don't know, maybe get longer episodes, but then have more to say. I don't know.
Yeah,
depends on the release calendar too, like what's coming out and what's.
That too, and I'm also like, my work schedule is completely crazy. It's all over the place. So I apologize. I apologize for that. It's just like something will pop up and be like, you're booked for the next 3 days. And I'm like, that's cool because 2 minutes ago, I didn't think I was going to have any work. So I was like, yeah, that's just the business. So, but I'm happy and grateful to be out here. It's very lovely. So, and then I get to connect with people like you, Levi, and be like, all right, we're going to talk on a podcast. And then we get to talk and just chat. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in. A huge thank you to the patrons who help make it all possible. If you want to support the channel, consider checking that out or liking, leaving a comment, all of that. But you really honestly don't need to do any of that. Just you listening in it's a huge boon to me. So thank you so much. And until next time, everybody, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye.